I think it was when I was in my junior year of high school. Which would have been like 2003. I really liked the Penguin brand polo shirts that kind of were like mod. Like I was in hardcore, and so like we would go into the thrift stores and try to find those. But back then it wasn't really like we weren't looking to make money.
Yeah.
It was just like you couldn't buy those new.
Yeah.
So we would go try to find those in like skinny jeans because you couldn't get those in the stores. So that's where like thrifting was like when you couldn't find stuff in shops. We were doing pop-ups at my friend's like boutique.
Yeah.
So we had sorority girls coming over to do like denim fittings, and so we would do custom cutoffs. This was like 2006. We tried to open a little shop in Tucson, Arizona, and it was all right. And then just like about 6 years ago when I opened my shop farther down Hawthorne. The back started off like we had an office for my eBay because I was doing eBay full time for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
We had an office up by the airport. My lease was running out, and instead of renewing an office lease, I was like, what if I get a retail space and my wife could try having like a little boutique in the front, and I did my eBay in the back. And then after that, I was like, what if I just like let some kids in here into the back to shop like the stuff that hadn't sold on eBay yet.
Right.
And so that like was like a kind of a lot of baby steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always tried to have some employees here and there. Like when I was doing eBay, it was more like for helping me list and ship, but sourcing and stuff has always been me. It was just like a global kind of thing, and we still had to pay rent during the whole pandemic. I got 1 month off I had to pay back. The whole street was shut down. Like I swear to God, I saw like a tumbleweed like a few days after the shutdown. And I tried to do like some COVID friendly shopping where I had like only outdoor racks, but everyone was so scared. A long time ago, I used to go to like Buffalo Exchange like years ago because it was like they would take like more cool stuff back then, and it was priced reasonably. Now you go into them and it's like more expensive. I have a lot of friends who help me find stuff, but most of it's me just hitting the road and like just nooks and crannies and just going all over the place. Like I went to a yard sale the other day and the guy was like, oh man, I threw away all my shirts last year. I had all these biker shirts from the 60s, and like you hear those everywhere you go, and it's just like, are you serious? Like you always feel like you just missed like getting rich. I went to go eat at this food cart that my wife's old boss opened, and I was telling him about what I did for a living, and he's like, oh man, I wish you had told me a couple months ago. My uncle died in Colorado, my great uncle. We went out there and he had an old like mercantile general store, and he said the entire floor, like the basement, everything was full of clothes from like the 70s and older, like 50s. And he said that none of the family wanted any of it, and that they sold the entire building with everything in it for like $20,000, and it was in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. So if I had gotten that connection 2 months earlier, I would like literally be rich. I like having stuff for everybody. Like I have the $5 stuff, and then like 10 to 15, and then like my specialty like feeling stuff is like the 35 to 55. Like that's like stuff that like feels like very cool or individual. Yeah, just I like affordability like mixed with specialty. And then I obviously have like the grail items that are like 100 plus, but I don't like putting those out as much because people feel more discouraged. If you put like like all the shirts are like 300. I tried to like put my face on my branding a lot more. Any shop like 2nd Street or Buffalo or whatever, but I kind of want to have more of a personal connection and comedy too. Like I was posting a lot of funny videos, like what I would imagine how Bill Murray would run a store. You know, I want to do that because like even though I love vintage and stuff, it's not necessarily like who I am. So I like trying to bring out who I am, and then people who like that will maybe like the shop. Depending on where you are in your journey of having a shop, it can feel overwhelming. If you're making enough money doing what you're doing, what you love, then like you don't need to pay attention as much to it. During hardship times like the pandemic or whatever, sometimes that stuff is louder, like 2nd Street opened like during a time where it was like kind of iffy on the street. It moves and flows. Like sometimes like there's more places for people to compare. They're like, man, why is your shop so expensive? Like Second Street's like $3,
Right.
and then after a few months, Second Street raises their prices, and then I'm now like a thrift store instead of a vintage shop. You know, it moves around, and now I want to move more towards like TikTok, even though that's not necessarily the place that people want to see like marketing.
Right.
So it's like making sure it's like wholesome. It's like you don't want to get on there and be like, check out my thrift finds, and like that's all you do, because like that's cool, but like it's not really what I want to do. Really just like being personal with the town, and I focus more in city instead of like online. So even on my online presence is like focused on people in Portland. You know, besides using this as like a community space, which I always want to do, and art shows, and I love doing like the music stuff too, and I have had a couple food pop-ups. I want to do more of that. And then design, I want to do more like clothing design. Like I printed a shirt recently. I do other things on the side besides like stuff for the store, but everything kind of melds together. Like if I do a podcast or something, I would get benefits to the shop too. Money might be the focus, obviously, because you gotta like get by and like hustle or whatever. That like you're gonna get burnt out if you're like just doing it for the short term and like the hype of it. Look at a way to build. Like if you want to do that full time, like if you want to have a retail store and stuff, that's great. But like maybe look at other options included in there, because it is like not a fleeting industry, but it's like it's all over the place. So working on whether or not you really want to like have a shop or sell online versus like, do you want to design a clothing brand, or do you want to upcycle, or do you want to like, you know, do that until you make more money and then do something else. So like really figuring out if it's like what you want to do long term, and then committing. Like I'm into skating, like I'm only gonna sell vintage Osiris, and like I'm only gonna sell like Jinkos. I don't sell skinny jeans, those are stupid. Like, why aren't you buying this one thing I sell?